Welcome everyone to another episode of With an Expert. Let me remind you that this is a series dedicated to helping you to develop the skills you need to pass exams like IELTS and emigrate abroad. We also introduce you to services which will help you in the emigration process. Today, my guest is Michael Hart from Halo Financial. Halo Financial is a leading specialist in currency exchange and international payments. During the interview, Michael is going to explain how to access better exchange rates and discuss how he can assist you in moving your funds from one country to another. So, Michael, welcome to the show.
Hi there. Good morning.
Can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, no, of course. So, as I say, my name's Michael Hart. Work at a company called Halo Financial, and we assist individuals and companies moving funds between currencies, generally when they're looking to migrate from one country to another. So yeah, that's essentially what we do.
And how long has Halo been in existence?
So we've been operating for 16 years now. So it has. I've been there for nearly 11 of them. So when I joined, it was a relatively small outfit of around 8 to 10 staff. We're now up at about 40 or so. So yeah, been a good journey to see the company grow and be part of it over the last decade or so.
Fantastic. Let's move on now to talk about the challenges people face when they're looking to move abroad these days, especially when they're trying to transfer large amounts of money. There's certainly plenty of challenges these days. Can you outline what those challenges are that you're seeing?
Yeah, no, of course. So, I mean, it does seem to be getting harder and harder to migrate these days, especially to sort of countries like Australia and New Zealand, which obviously are very desirable. But there's also the macro challenges that we have to get over, and that's obviously it was Brexit for quite some time. That's sort of weighed on exchange rates and created quite a lot of uncertainty. And then of course it's been moving into issues with COVID over the last 12 months. It's of course completely changed the way that we live and the way that we work. I mean, the fact that we're doing this from home as well. We're not in an office. It's really changed how well, at the moment it's really prevented people from really moving at all. But we're looking at ways to get over these hurdles and hopefully start to see things opening back up again. This is, as I'm sure you will know, that the borders in many countries are as good as closed. So there has been migration has really sort of taken a hit over the last 12 months. But it doesn't go to say that the skill shortages aren't there. So yeah, it's looking at ways that when things do get back to bit more back to normal, which I think we're edging closer to, we can try and sort of jump on that and get people moving as quickly as possible.
Yes, and we're certainly seeing on our side that it's taking longer for visas to be processed and emigration processes to end. Are you seeing hope on the horizon on your side?
Yeah, so we are sort of seeing we're seeing some exemption visas being granted from professions that weren't just limited to healthcare. So we are sort of seeing exemption visas in sort of technology and construction in some cases, which came as a bit of a surprise because we thought it was going to just be blanket. No one's coming in. So yeah, there has been some improvement on that, and there is talk of borders sort of opening, especially in Australia and New Zealand, before the end of the year. So it's kind of those things that the migration process, as we know, does just take a little while. So sort of getting things in place now, ready to move for the end of the year, even before COVID, timeframes of this sort of nature would be quite normal. So yeah, it's kind of now's the time that we're ready to kind of open up again. And yeah, obviously once people start moving themselves, then of course they're going to be start moving their money across as well.
So now is it definitely a good time for customers to be contacting you and to preparing for that move, I guess. So let's move on to talk about the solution to these problems in some senses. I mean, people might be finding it harder at the moment to transfer money as part of their moving process. What are the problems on that side, on the financial side, on the currency side?
So I mean, obviously there's been a lot of uncertainty. So people are sort of concerned about moving their money when they're not necessarily moving across themselves, or people have kind of just went into a bit of a hold pattern. Whereas now, so we're starting to see that there is sentiments picking up again, and people think, well, actually, no, the world isn't coming to an end, and there's a bit more confidence in the market. So yeah, we can essentially help them move their funds from one currency to another. And if they were sort of looking to do through their bank, they might not get the best exchange rate.
So what makes your currency exchange service different then from other places on the high street?
So it's the service that they get from us. So if you were to move sort of your money with your bank, then it would just simply be a case, here's the exchange rate. Do you want to move it across now? And that's it. And that's the only service they offer. They also traditionally don't necessarily offer the best exchange rates by any stretch. So this isn't necessarily any one bank, but in some cases they will charge about 4% to move your money across. Which, when it's a bit of holiday money and you accept, if you're at the counter at Heathrow Airport, that you're not going to get a very good exchange rate for your holiday money, when you're actually moving your life assets across, 3 or 4% makes a huge difference to how much you're getting in the currency that the country that you're moving to. So yeah, it does make a big difference, and that's just one element of it. So getting that better exchange rate through us, obviously encouraging you to check with your bank the rate they can offer and compare it with ours, and see what you can save. But we can also help a lot with the timing of the transfer, and that's really where it comes into its own, because as I sort of touched on before, the migration process doesn't happen overnight, or generally doesn't happen overnight. So a lot of the time people have got 3 to 6 months to think about when they're going to move their money from one currency to another. And that's where we can give the customers some guidance and sort of suggest maybe exchange rates that we think are achievable within that time frame. Because if we've got a 6-month period to work with, there's a far higher chance of us getting a better rate in that period than you calling up the day before you go, calling your bank to get an exchange rate. So yeah, that's that's the main difference, is better exchange rates and the timing of the transfer.
Excellent. So this is really a premium service then, and this is something your company specializes in. Am I right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. So all we do is international payments, currency exchange. So it's all we ever have done. A lot of people don't know this service exists, and that's potentially why the banks haven't had to sharpen their pencil previously, because people just assume there's only one way to move your money from one country to another. So yeah, it's something that's there. It's all we do. That said, we are very closely linked to the migration industry. So we do sort of international property purchases and helping people that are working in other countries and receive salaries in different currencies, for example. But our bread and butter is the migration sector, and within that, it's pretty much to sort of Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and to an extent the US as well. So while we are very much a payment service, we work within the migration industry, and we've got a lot of relationships and partnerships there, and that's what we've how we've built as a business. It's just building partnerships with other service providers that are in the industry, and that's the organic growth that we like to work with, because it's a good way that, you know, if we're speaking with people and they come to us, they can trust us because they've come from a reputable source.
Sounds fantastic. I certainly was unaware of this kind of service until quite recently, and it would have definitely saved me a lot of money over the last 2 or 3 decades. Where are you based, Michael? Where is Halo based?
So main office is in Battersea in southwest London. So right near Waterloo.
Are you accessible to people who are international, who are working, or who are nationals of other countries?
Yeah. So while we're a London-based company, we're very much an international company. Kind of goes with the territory of being international payments. We we don't really sort of see clients face to face so much. It's more that we're speaking with them over the phone and through email. A lot of our customers aren't even in the UK. They're in all over the world, from one side to the other. We've very much pride ourselves on sort of dealing with being open long hours, and being able to deal with customers' requirements as and when they come up at pretty much any time of the day. We've got someone out in New Zealand. She's been out there for quite some time now. She's actually working full time for Halo out there. That's one thing that's actually come out of the pandemic, is we kind of realised that, you know, someone can actually operate full time from New Zealand, and with the technology now, it's actually been a pretty seamless move across. And what's that enabled is it gives us that coverage, so that if someone is in Australia or New Zealand and needs to make a currency transfer or get in touch and wants an answer straight away, if it's 3 o'clock in the morning here, it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon there. So they will get a quick response. So while we're not quite 24-hour, we're not far off.
I can certainly vouch for the fact that your company responds very, very quickly to emails, even on a Sunday afternoon. So can you talk us through your customer's journey then? What happens if somebody, say, from the Middle East approaches you wanting to transfer their savings, maybe, you know, the sale of their house, just transfer their whole life from the Middle East to, say, Canada? I mean, what's the process? What happens?
Yeah, so also we would just want to have a chat with them, and that's again where we differentiate a little bit from sort of more digital approaches of moving funds across. We are, you know, a team at the end of the phone that will take the time to have a conversation with the customer. So you'll speak to one of our consultants. So we've got eight consultants on the private client desk. We've got about 80 years of experience between them. So they've all been doing this for quite some time now. And we'll go through their requirement. So we'll discuss, you know, what funds they've got that they need to move, whether or not the house sale has gone through, or if the funds have actually become available at this point. And then once we've sort of identified what they need to move, we then look at what funds and timeframes they need to work to get them into, in this example, to Canada. So customer might say, well, we are actually looking to buy a property within 3 to 6 months of moving out there. That also says to us then, okay, well, you don't necessarily need to move all your money across in one go. So we'll often sort of split up the requirement. So it removes a bit of risk from the situation. We say, okay, well, let's hedge your bets a bit. Let's lock in on half of what you need to move across now, and then see what happens in the next 3 months if we can potentially get you a better exchange rate, for example. And even if, for example, say their house sale hasn't gone through in the Emirates, then they can say, okay, well, today's rate is good, for example. They can actually lock into an exchange rate, send us a 5 or 10% deposit of that total amount. So say it was the equivalent of 100,000 Canadian dollars, they would send us the equivalent of a $10,000 deposit. And then they've actually got a year to settle that contract. So once their house sale does go through and the funds are available, they can then send us that balance, and we move that money over to Canada. So it means essentially you can take advantage of a better exchange rate, even if you don't have all the funds available to you at the time. So again, it just comes down to forward planning and managing your currency risk. Because while we try and focus as much on what we can achieve for you on the upside, just as important, if not more important, is protecting you against the downside, because the exchange rate can move against you. It's as good as a 50-50 chance it's going to move in your favor or against. So our job is to make sure that if it is starting to move against you, you've got protections in place so that you know your worst case scenario of how much money you're going to get into the currency of the country you're moving to. And then from there, you can start to budget and start to say, okay, well, this is how much worst case we're going to get. This is how much best case we're going to receive. So yeah, that's sort of a strategy that we'd go through, we'd build for the customer. And then when it actually comes to moving funds, we would provide, say, Dirham bank details, and they would contact their bank to make a transfer from their account to ours. And then we'd ask them to provide us the bank details of the currency they're moving to. So if they've opened a bank account in Canada, then we'd move the money directly into that Canadian bank account. If they haven't set up an account, which is quite a common problem, we can actually hold those funds until they actually arrive. A few days later, they've arrived there in person, set up their bank account, and then we'll move the money across, so that basically as soon as they can access a bank account, we can move it into the account for them.
Excellent. Definitely a step up from the service you can expect in banks these days.
Yeah.
How soon should people contact you ideally before a move? We get contacted at the last minute. Sometimes it's too late to help some people. So when is the ideal time for someone to approach you?
We're happy to have a chat as soon as you're sort of starting the migration process. Just because the longer we've got to work with your requirement, the chances are the better exchange rate, the more currency you'll get at the other end. Generally, we work on, say, anything from sort of 3 to 6 months is probably sort of the run-of-the-mill point in which the customer comes back to us. It's often once they've had their visa granted, so they know for 100% that they are going. Because of course, if you haven't got a visa, we wouldn't suggest you move your money across, because the last thing you want to do is bring it back. So once you know you're actually going, then that's the time to get in touch with us. And normally at that point, it's another sort of minimum 1 month, anything up to a year after that they actually move. So then that gives us time to work with them. So yeah, as a general rule of thumb, 3 to 6 months before you're actually looking to move out.
Great. And you mentioned potential problems opening bank accounts, for example. Is that something you can help customers with as well? Introducing them to banks, pension specialists, etc.
Yeah, no, exactly. So that sort of network of companies I touched on before within the migration sector is a very valuable tool for us to pass on to our customers. So yeah, we work with banks in Canada, in Australia, New Zealand, pension transfer specialists, international removals, pet transfers. You pretty much, if it's something you need to sort before you're moving to another country, chances are we've got someone that we can put you in the right direction for. And that's, again, just really important that it's a big move that you're making, and there's a lot that you can arrange before you go. So, because it's quite a stressful thing to move to another country. So just get as many of these things in place, including the currency, of course, before you go, so that there's less worry and problems that are going to arise when you arrive. So it's going to be enough to sort out when you arrive anyway. So get as much done before you go.
Great. So let's move on a little bit and talk about the kind of tools and techniques that people can use and that you in your company use. What kind of tools and techniques do you use that make you a bit different?
Yeah, so I briefly touched on that forward contract before. So if you're looking to sort of book into an exchange rate before those funds are available, you can do so. But the main tools we use are called limit orders and stop losses. So essentially, if you want to target an exchange rate, we can place an order that when the rate reaches that level, we have a trigger in place to automatically buy the funds for you at that point in time. So, for example, if it was a sterling into Australian dollar transfer, then if the exchange rate for sterling Aussie was at 180, previously it has been above 2. So you could say to us, I don't need to move these funds for the next 6 months. I can wait for this better exchange rate to come through. Let's say I'll move £100,000 when the rate reaches 2. Once it does trigger to that level, we'll automatically buy the funds on your behalf. And to put that into perspective, if you've got £100,000, it's at 180, that's $180,000. If you manage to get it when it gets back up to say 2, that's $200,000. So in a relatively short period of time, on an amount of money that, obviously 100,000 is a lot of money, but people are often moving funds from a house sale and they've got considerably more. That move in the exchange rate makes a huge difference to what they receive at the other end. And by no means can we say we're going to guarantee it gets to that level. We're just increasing your chances of getting that better rate. And then, of course, if you've got that order in at 2, it gets to the point that you're looking to move and it's in the 190s somewhere, we can say, okay, well, let's pull the order and we'll just move it across now. You still get that 190,000, whatever it might be, the rate at that point in time. So you've still got all the flexibility of locking into an exchange rate that you might have done the week before you go. You also get to use these tools, which enables you to target better exchange rates. And then equally on the downside, this comes more into sort of property purchases with a stop loss, for example. So we've had it before, people buying a property in France, for example. They've got a budget of how much they can afford to spend on a property. And they need to set a worst case scenario. They can, in some cases, say, well, if the exchange rate goes below this, we can't afford to buy this property anymore because we simply wouldn't have enough euros if the exchange rate drops below 110, which, it's not that long ago. Sterling euro has been at some pretty shocking rates for sterling sellers. So yeah, you can set a worst case scenario. And again, sort of going back onto what I was saying before, it's all about the planning. It's about the risk management and kind of hedging your bets a bit so that when you move to another country, worst case scenario, I'm going to get this amount. Best case scenario, I'm going to get this amount, or somewhere in between, which when we see the amount of volatility that is caused by the likes of Brexit and COVID, where we have seen 20% swings in either directions over a relatively short period of time, all of a sudden that 20% swing can be the difference of your net value swinging by 20%, which if you've built that up over a lifetime, you'd never dream of putting a bet of all of that amount on a whim. So we're here to make sure you've got a bit of a strategy in place so you know exactly where you stand.
And I believe you have a currency update that you send out daily. Is that right?
Yeah. So our one of the guys, David, that set up the company on day one, he writes our daily currency updates, daily, and then there's also a weekly one because daily is there's plenty of information in there. Some people then opt for the weekly one, but he kind of breaks down currency news into a much more sort of sort of bite-size, manageable chunks, so that he also tries to tell the odd joke in there as well. So it is quite a good read. It's not just sort of hardcore currency news. It's it's insightful, but yeah, it's quite an easy to read document which goes out every morning, and we actually even know for a fact some of our competitors download it as well. So it must be quite good.
Fantastic. Let's move on to some questions and answers now that we've had sent in. Okay, first we've covered some of them already, I think, but are there any fees? What are the fees for this service?
So yeah, it's a good question. We don't actually charge a fee per se for our service. The only time we do is on amounts below £5,000. There is a £15 transfer fee or equivalent in whichever currency they're sending. Generally, there's no actual fees from ourselves. We make our money on the buying and selling of the currency, so it's just purely on the exchange rate that we can offer at the point that you're buying funds. That said, the exchange rate we can offer is generally considerably better than you might get through a high street bank, for example.
Just win-win.
Yeah, exactly. And always say is just get a comparative price from your bank if that's who you're going to use, and with ourselves. And we're reasonably confident. I can't say categorically because we can't say that, but I'm reasonably confident that you will be getting a better exchange rate. So our price built into the rate, so you then don't get charged any fees. You might incur receiving fees in the currency the funds are going to. Unfortunately, they're unavoidable. Even if you moved money with your bank, you'd still get charged a fee by the receiving bank. So, for example, money into Australia, you'd get charged about $10 to $20. It's pretty much between $10 and $20 in that local currency in Australia, New Zealand, and Canada. Emirates isn't too bad, but yeah, the fee is it's not a huge amount, but it's just something to be aware of, that you will get a tiny little bank fee charged at the other end.
Another question is this safe and secure? Obviously, people are very worried about sending their whole life abroad with a company like your own that they might not be familiar with. Is it safe?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, again, a very valid question. So first of all, we're fully authorised by the Financial Conduct Authority. We've got the highest level of regulation that we can for an international payments service. So that puts us on a good footing. The other side of it is, of course, we hold segregated client accounts. So if worst case scenario, when Halo's holding your funds, if the business goes out of business, then your funds would be in a segregated client account. So creditors wouldn't get access to those funds. They'd just be held in a segregated Barclays account. So you're kind of protected from day one. As soon as you're sending us funds, you know that they're safe. And I was going to touch on that what been quite prominent recently is we've noticed an incredible number of scams going on recently. Even personally, I've had a few in the last week about, from the post office saying I've underpaid on a delivery by $2.99 and trying to get bank details from that, to real life examples where there are fraudsters out there trying to fleece people of their life assets and persuading them to send some phony investment and moving money around. Unfortunately, especially in COVID, where people aren't out and about as much, there are more fraudsters out there. So we pride ourselves on most of our customers get recommended to by one of our partners. So we like to operate in a trusted circle, and we encourage our customers to do their own due diligence on Halo. because fortunately we do have a good reputation, and if you Google us, the vast majority of what comes up about us is very positive. So yeah, of course, check, and you should do that whenever you're moving, serious sums of money about, check out the company that you're dealing with.
And have you actually saved anybody's money from scams?
Yeah, so we did have one quite recently that a fraudster had persuaded a lady that she was investing in a pension fund in another country that was going to yield 25% a year or something ridiculous, and we actually had £60,000 land on our account from her. And luckily our settlements team, again, advantage that we are a human operation, so it is humans at the end that's looking at all these payments. Picked it up, saw something didn't look quite right, and then it turned out it was a complete scam. And fortunately, we could let the customer know that this was about to go to a fraudster, and you would never have seen a penny again. So she was incredibly grateful, and yeah, it makes us feel good as well, because that woman would have been absolutely devastated if that money had gone. So we're kind of there to protect you and safeguard from that kind of thing. So
in some ways, the money is safer with you than with us, almost.
Yeah, and again, sort of with maybe digital banks and things like that, it's all automated. And if the fraudsters work how to get through certain triggers and things, then it might not get picked up. Whereas, we're still a little bit old school, if you like, in that it is, you speak to a human from day one. When the payments are being made, there's a settlements team that you can speak to about any payment queries, because there's sort of new bank details that people are dealing with. It's quite a stressful time. And if a payment does get held up for whatever reason, which does happen, you want to be rest assured that you can just make a phone call and sort of say, well, actually, it's been held up because of this. We can do this and sort this out. Whereas you just wouldn't get that necessarily through your bank or through other providers. So it's just giving you that little bit more security and confidence that your money's going to arrive in full where you want it to, and that's pretty important when you're moving to another country and literally moving your life asset, everything you've ever earned, across in 1 or 2 goes.
That's fantastic. It sounds incredible, really, and it sounds like you guys are doing a really good job out there, especially at this time of COVID crisis and with all those scams that's out there. I'm sorry, we've run out of time. If our viewers want to contact you, how can they do that?
Yeah, so they can go onto our website, which is halofinancial.com. They can email me directly as well. So I think my details and a couple of links will be sent after this finishes.
That's right.
And of course, feel free to email me directly, and I'll put you straight through to one of the consultants and arrange a phone call. There's no cost or obligation to use Halo, so have a chat with us and see if we can help. That's all we suggest.
Great, and I'll put a link below this video, if there is a link below the video as in the way that it's being viewed. If not, if anyone wants to be put in direct contact with Michael, and you're watching this on another channel where there's no link available, just send an email to me, andy@englishwithanexpert.com, and I'll put you directly in touch. Well, thanks very much, Michael. It's been a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you. Bye-bye.